Hi guys, I hope all of you are doing well. So in today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how to do a closed passage. Now, basically, a closed passage is when you've been given a passage and it has blank spaces in it. And for every blank space, you've been given like 4 or 5 options, and you have to choose the option that fits the best in the blank. Okay, it's either one word or it's a few words. Whatever it is, you have to choose the best option. Now, this is pretty much the same as completing sentences. I covered completing sentences in my previous video. So if you haven't checked that out yet, please make sure you do because this is pretty much the same thing as that. Okay, so except that those are sentences and this in this you'll have to complete a whole passage, but it's not difficult. It's exactly the same as completing sentences, and I have discussed the entire procedure in detail in my previous video, so please check that out because in this video I'm just going to be discussing it briefly since I have done it before. Okay, so I'm just going to go over the procedure very briefly, so that you guys know what procedure to follow when you're attempting a closed passage. Now, closed passages are very similar to completing sentences. You will be given a short passage with many missing words, and you will choose the best option for each blank. The procedure for this is the same as that for completing sentences. Here's a recap. Number one, read the sentence. So this goes without saying, whatever question you get, whether it's a sentence, whether it's a paragraph, whatever it is, you have to read it thoroughly. You have to make sure that you understand it because otherwise it's very likely that you will choose the wrong answer, okay? So no matter how many times you have to read a question to understand it, do so. Just read it 5, 6, 7 times, as many times as you need to, because it's very important that you understand the question before choosing an option. Number two, positives and negatives. Now, like I mentioned in my previous video, and I'm sure all of you know this on some level, that when you read a sentence or a passage, on some level, you know if this sentence or this passage is positive or negative, right? So, positive or negative. Now, what that means is that, for example, if I use negative words in my passage, like angry, like hate, like protest, or like despair or dismay, or any of these words, these are negative words, right? All of us know that. So when you read these words in a passage, you automatically know that this is a negative passage, right? And the word you will be looking for will also be negative, of course, because it has to fit in with the meaning of the passage. Similarly, when a sentence or a passage is positive, okay, when it's talking about something positive, when it's talking about someone's good qualities, or when it's talking about something nice, like maybe it's talking about a garden, maybe it's talking about a good experience, maybe it's talking about a beautiful place, right? So all of that is positive, and so you'll make sure that when you're choosing a word for the blank, you will choose a positive word because it has to fit in with the rest of the paragraph, okay? So, decide what kind of a word you're looking for, one with a positive meaning or one with a negative meaning. Look at the general tone of the sentence and see what kind of words are generally being used in the sentence. That will be your biggest indicator as to what kind of word you have to look for. Okay, number three, conjunctions. So, conjunctions are words that connect clauses within a sentence. Okay, so I've covered conjunctions in my parts of speech video. So, if you haven't watched that yet, please make sure you do because it's very important for you to know the different parts of speech, including conjunctions. Okay, so you have to look for words like but, rather, although, however, and, while, but, therefore. Okay, so now what they do is that they reveal the sentence organization and the hint blank relationship. They tell you what kind of words to look for as they change the thought process in the sentence. This is the most important phrase, right? They change the thought process in the sentence. Now, how that works is that, for example, you read the word but in a sentence, okay? So when you read the word but, right now you don't even know what sentence I'm talking about. You haven't read the sentence, but you know that when the word but comes in a sentence, the thought process of the sentence changes, right? So a sentence is going in one direction, and then you see the word but, and then it starts to go in another direction. Okay, I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'll give you an example. So in my previous video, I gave you the example of I told you a sentence which was, she is kind to her friends but rude to her family members. Sorry, she is kind to her friends but dash to her family members. Now, I gave you a blank over there, but you automatically knew that whatever word will come in that blank will be the opposite of kind. Why? Because of the word but. Okay, so when a sentence is going in one direction and the word but comes in the middle, you know that now an opposing idea will be stated, right? Similarly, if you see the word and, when you read the word and in a sentence, you know that a similar idea is going to be stated after the word and, right? So, for example, if I say she is obedient and um, dash towards her elders. She is obedient and dash towards her elders. So you know that in that dash, there's going to be a word similar in meaning to obedient, or it's going to be a positive word, firstly, because you're listing someone's good qualities, right? And you know that it's not going to be opposite to obedient, it's going to be similar in meaning to obedient, right? So it can be respectful, respectful towards her elders, right? So you know that because of the word and. So these words, all of these conjunctions, there are many more, and these are just a few. So all of these conjunctions sort of tell you what kind of a word you have to look for. Okay, so these are very important. So it's very important that you know what conjunctions are and how many different types of conjunctions there are and which words are considered as conjunctions. It's very important for you to know all of that. Okay, so make sure you have watched my parts of speech video and my previous video, which was on completing sentences. Okay, the fourth step is visualize. Now, what that means is that sometimes when we read a sentence, and there's a blank in that sentence, we kind of already know what kind of a word is going to fit in there, right? Like my previous example, when I said she is obedient and dash towards her elders. So you already knew that I didn't give you any options for that sentence, right? You didn't have any options, but you sort of, on some level, knew that the word that's going to fit in the blank will be similar in meaning to obedient, or it's going to be like it's going to be a positive word. You knew that on some level, okay? You knew that it's not going to be rude, it's not going to be disrespectful. You knew that it's going to be something along the lines of obedient. Okay, so that's what visualizing means. When you read a sentence, you sort of visualize what kind of a word is going to fit in the blank. And in that case, usually when you're so sure about something, usually when you look at the options, you see that the word you visualized is there in the options, or a synonym of that word is there in the options. Synonym is a word having the same meaning, okay? Similar in meaning is synonym. So when you visualize a word and you go to the options and you see, oh, I visualize this word and this word is right here, or a synonym of this word is right here. In that case, it's all good, it's all great. You're very lucky if that happens. It's not always going to happen, but it may happen sometimes. And in that case, you can just choose the right option. You don't have to think about it much. And but again, like be careful. Make sure that you are selecting the right option, and then you can just move on, right? So that's visualization. Okay, then comes elimination. Eliminate the options you know for sure are wrong. Do not rule out choices if you don't know their meanings and unless you are sure they do not work. If you have doubts, leave and return after checking the other choices. Now, what this means is that when you go through all the steps that I have just taught you, when you go through them one by one, when you're attempting a question, for example, you decided whether the sentence is positive or negative, then you looked for conjunctions in the sentence that told you what kind of a word you have to look for. Then you visualized the word. Okay, even if you didn't visualize the word, that's fine, as long as you did the earlier steps, right? So when you've done all that, I'm sure you'll be able to eliminate some choices, okay? Of course, you cannot be like, oh, I think all of the options fit in there, because that's not possible. Some options will clearly be canceling out, okay? And you have to eliminate them. But it's very important for you to know not to cancel out any options that you are not sure about. For example, if there are some options that you're like, I don't know if they can fit in this blank or if they can't fit in this blank. I don't know. Don't cancel them out. Okay. It's not a good idea to cancel these options out. Only cancel those options out that you're sure about, that these are not going to fit in my blank. Okay. Because mistakes can happen like this. Like if you cancel an option that you're doubtful of, and then maybe the right answer is that option. Okay, so you don't want to make that mistake. So when you're unsure about something, when you're absolutely unsure, when you just don't know what to do, just leave it, just do the other questions and then come back and attempt it again. Okay, and if you still don't know, sometimes you just have to take a guess. Okay, sometimes you just have to use your common sense and make a guess and just hope for the best, and that's fine. Just make sure, even when you don't know the meanings of any of the words in the options, because that will happen sometimes. Okay, maybe all of the options will be very difficult words that you will never have heard of, right? And that's fine. Even if that happens, just make sure the word you are eventually selecting makes some sense in the sentence. Okay, it sounds logically correct, and you're making an educated guess. You're not just guessing randomly. Okay, so you can encounter different types of sentence completions. So now there are three types of sentence completions that you should know about, that you will come across in your admission test. Okay, and I went over this in great detail in the previous video, but I'll go over it briefly in this video too. So in the first type of sentence is restatement or comparison. Now, what is restatement? When you're restating something, when something has already been stated and you're building upon that idea and stating a similar idea, right? Like I said, she is obedient and respectful towards her elders. So what did I do? I restated something, or I built upon my previous idea. So basically, this sentence will contain words that connect similar ideas. Okay, now these are the words you have to look for. These are the words that will tell you whether a sentence is a restatement or not, or a comparison or not. Now, restatement or comparison is exactly the same thing. Okay, so now these are the words you have to look for that tell you whether a sentence is a restatement or not. Okay, similarly, likewise, in addition to, furthermore, moreover, also, in other words, namely, and in fact, that is, besides, therefore, for, indeed, truly, as. Now, if you notice, all of these words you use in sentences only when you want to add something, right? Like, for example, in addition to, furthermore, moreover, therefore you use when you want to conclude something, right? So all of these words are only used when you want to sort of build upon an idea that you have previously already stated. Okay, so let's look at this example. The letter she wrote to me was brief. Similarly, my reply was dash. Now, because of this word similarly, what do you know about the blank? Even though you've been given no options over here, you know that the word that will fit in here will be similar to this word, which is brief, right? Why? Because of the word similarly. You know that this is a restatement. You know that this is a comparison of two similar ideas. The letter she wrote to me was brief. Similarly, my reply was, so it will be a synonym of brief, so which can be short, which can be, see here are the synonyms: hurried, cursory, or short. Okay, so my reply was hurried or cursory or short or brief. Okay, so how do you know that? You know that because of the word similarly. So these words you have to look out for. These are very important in understanding what type of a sentence it is and understanding what type of a word you will need to fill in the blank. Okay, so number two, contrast. Now, contrast is the opposite of comparison. Okay, comparison is when you are connecting similar ideas, and contrast is when you are connecting opposite ideas. Here, okay, this sentence will contain words that can connect opposite ideas. The words you have to look out for are these. I've listed them down for you. However, although, on the other hand, in contrast, while, but, whereas, instead, though, despite, yet, on the contrary, regardless, rather than except. Okay, so let's look at an example. Although Susan is generally short with people, short means rude. Let me write that down. short with people. Her twin sister Hannah is dash. Okay, so now how do we know what kind of a word we have to look for to put in this blank? Because of the word although, we know that this sentence is connecting two opposite ideas, right? That although Susan is generally short with people, her twin sister Hannah is the opposite. What is the opposite of rude? It's kind, it's polite, it's civil. These are the synonyms, right? There are many more, but these are just a few. So you already know you haven't been given any options for this, but because of the word although, you know that the word that comes in here will be opposite to the word short. Okay, so again, you have to look out for these words because they tell you a lot, okay? They really help you choose the right option. The third one is cause and effect. Now, what is cause and effect? Cause and effect is when one event causes another to occur, right? So a cause happens, which means an event happens, and effect is the effect of that event, okay? So for example, okay, so the sentence will indicate that one event causes another to occur. Okay, so we use thus, therefore, hence, consequently, because, due to, as a result, leads to, accordingly, if then. Okay, so let's read this example. Annie's sister completely destroyed her sandcastle. As a result, Annie was dash. Now, what do we know about this sentence? We know that this is a cause and effect sentence. How do we know that? We know that because of this. Okay, we know because of these words, we know that this sentence is talking about an event, and then it's telling us what happened as a consequence of that event. Okay, it's telling us what the effect was of that event. Okay, so for example, if I say I woke up late, therefore I was late to my meeting. Okay, so what happened here? I talked about an event, which was I woke up late, and then I used the word therefore, this word, therefore, and then I said, therefore, I was late to my meeting. So, what was the effect? I was late to my meeting. So, what happened here? I mentioned a cause, I mentioned an effect. In the middle, I used the word therefore. So, because of the word therefore, you knew that this is a cause and effect sentence. Now, what do we know about this? If we use a little bit of our common sense, we know that when someone destroys something we have made, we get mad, right? In simple terms, we get angry, we get upset, we get sad. So we already know that the word that's going to fit in over here is going to be a synonym of angry, right? And angry, displeased, or furious. The answer should be a word that represents the effect of the event occurring in the sentence, which could be angry, displeased, or furious. Similarly, if I give you another sentence, which is my sister gifted me a bag, therefore I was dash. Okay, my sister gifted me a bag, therefore I was dash. Now, what do we know about this sentence? We know number one that it's a cause and effect sentence. How do we know that? We know that because of the word therefore. Okay, now if we use our common sense, what happens when someone gifts us something? We know that it makes us happy. Okay, so you know that the word that will fit in the blank will be similar to the word happy. Okay, it's as simple as that. It's not that difficult. Okay, so let's do a closed passage together. This is part of your worksheet that will be linked down below. So make sure you check it out because there are other closed passages in the worksheet as well. But let's do this one together. Now, I suggest when you see a closed passage, I suggest you read the whole thing once properly, okay? With the blanks, because that sort of helps you make sense of the passage and what it's talking about. It helps you figure out whether the passage is positive, is it negative? So it sort of helps you figure out a lot of things. So I suggest you read the entire passage once properly, okay? So let's read it. Petroleum or crude oil is one of the world's dash natural resources. Plastics, synthetic fibers, and dash chemicals are produced from petroleum. It is also used to make lubricants and waxes. Dash, its most important use is as a fuel for heating, for dash electricity, and dash for powering vehicles. Okay, so clearly in this passage, we are talking about the uses and the benefits of Petroleum. Okay, so definitely it's positive, right? Because we're highlighting the benefits of petroleum and what we can use petroleum for. So definitely it's positive, right? So let's go on and choose the correct options for each blank, okay? So petroleum or crude oil is one of the world's. Let's consider the options one by one. The world's as important natural resources? No. The world's most important natural resources? Yes. The world's so importantly natural resources? No. The world's less importantly natural resources? Absolutely not. So the option is B, right? Remember, it should sound grammatically correct also. That is the main thing because this section in your test is called grammar and vocabulary, right? So it's very important that you have to choose the right vocabulary, but you also have to make sure that it fits grammatically, right? It is grammatically correct. So in this one, the only grammatically correct option is most important. So the answer is B. Let's move on to the next one. So, petroleum or crude oil is one of the world's most important natural resources. Plastics, synthetic fibers, and dash chemicals, and much chemicals, and a lot chemicals, and plenty chemicals, and many chemicals. This is correct, right? Plastics, synthetic fibers, and many chemicals are produced from petroleum. It is also used to make lubricants and waxes. Dash, its most important use is as a fuel for heating. Therefore, its most important use is as a fuel for heating? No. However, its most important use is as a fuel for heating? Yes. Moreover, its most important use is no. Hence, its most important use is no. Okay, now for this one, even though the other options may sound correct, the correct option is however, right? And why is that? Because the other options, which are therefore, moreover, and hence, these are sort of concluding something, right? We're not concluding anything over here. We are sort of highlighting one of the uses of petroleum because we're saying its most important use is as a fuel for heating. So we're not concluding anything, are we? Concluding, we're not. Okay, we're building upon the idea that however, like petroleum has these many uses, however its most important use is as a fuel for heating. Okay, so we're going to use the word however. Okay, let's move on. For dash electricity, for generating electricity, yes. For to generate electricity, no. For being generated electricity, no. For generate electricity, no. So the correct option is A. Now, I hope you guys realize that when we're attempting a question of any sort, whether it's completing sentences, whether it's improving sentences, whether it's attempting a closed passage, whatever it is, we're not only using one concept in any question, right? We're using many different concepts. In fact, we're using most of the concepts that we have learned in all of the videos so far, right? So I hope you guys can identify that over here we're using the concept of faulty parallelism, right? Because we have to make sure that the word we choose over here, which is generating, it should be in the same form as the rest of the sentence is, right? And what is that? That's parallelism, right? So we're making sure that our sentence has parallelism, okay? Which is why we chose the word generating, because it makes sense, okay? Let's read it again. However, its most important use is as a fuel for heating, for generating electricity, and dash for powering vehicles. And decisively for powering vehicles, no. For and exclusively for powering vehicles, no. And especially for powering vehicles, yes, sounds right. And favorably for powering vehicles, no. So the correct answer is C. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make here is it's very important that your previous concepts are strong before moving on, because you will be using those concepts in all of your questions, right? So it's not going to be like if you're doing completing sentences, you're only going to focus on the rules taught to you in the completing sentences video. That doesn't work like that, right? Because we're talking about English as a language. And when you're talking about a language, you have to take a lot of rules and a lot of concepts together when you're doing something, okay? When you're attempting a question. So that's why please make sure that your previous concepts are strong and you're clear on them before moving on, because it will help you choose the correct options in such situations. Okay, so this is done and we'll do another example. Okay, so I'm going to do another close passage with you, and this is a bit longer than the previous one, but that's okay. So, firstly, we have to read the entire passage, okay, to make sense of what it is talking about and whether it is positive or negative. Okay, so let's read it together. The dash of drones is their ease of operation. Unlike most helicopters, hovering drones use multiple rotors. Many drones are base dash, a design called a quadcopter. Dash employs four rotors on arms set 90 degrees to each other. Each rotor is directly given by an electric motor. By turning two of the rotors clockwise and two anti-clockwise, it counters the twisting effects of torque produced by a single rotor helicopter. Without a tail rotor to push against the torque, a helicopter would spin hopelessly round and round. Dash. Whereas a helicopter needs to vary the pitch of its blades, the angle at which they attack the air, in order to maneuver, the multiple rotors on a drone have a fixed pitch. The drone instead maneuvers by independently changing the speed of one or more of its rotors under computer control. This setup requires fewer and less complex moving parts than a helicopter. It makes drones simpler, cheaper to build and maintain, and potentially more reliable. So, I'm sure all of you must have realized by now that this passage is about the benefits of using drones, okay, because it's highlighting the good qualities of drones, and it's also comparing, in some places it's also comparing it to a helicopter, right? And it's sorry, not comparing, the right word is contrasting, because again, comparing is when you are pointing out the similarities between two subjects, and contrasting is when you are pointing out the differences between two subjects, right? So it's drawing a contrast between the drone and the helicopter, and it's sort of highlighting the good qualities of the drone. Okay, so we know for sure that this is positive, and it's talking about the benefits and why we should use drones and what drones are used for and how they work. So it's about that, right? So let's take each blank one by one and let's see which option fits the best. Okay, the dash use of drones is their ease of operation. Now, because of the word ease of operation, we know that it's whatever this word is, it will be similar to advantage, right? As in, the advantage of drones is their ease of operation. So let's look at the options. Number one is disadvantage, which is wrong. We're not talking about a disadvantage, we're talking about a good quality. So an advantage. Attraction can work, throwback cannot work, aspect cannot work. So attraction is the answer. The attraction of drones is their ease of operation. Unlike most helicopters, hovering drones use multiple rotors. Many drones are based dash a design, based on a design. This one, based in a design, based at a design, based by a design, all of them are wrong. It is based on a design called a quadcopter. Dash employs, which employs four rotors on arms set 90 degrees to each other. Now let's look at the other options. Quadcopter, that employs. Quadcopter, what employs, where employs, that employs, it's which, okay? A design called a quadcopter, which employs four rotors on arms set 90 degrees to each other. Each rotor is directly driven by an electric motor. By turning two of the rotors clockwise and two anti-clockwise, it counters the twisting effects of torque produced by a single rotor helicopter. Without a tail rotor to push against the torque, a helicopter would spin hopelessly round and round. Okay, the options for the rest of the blanks are on the next slide, so I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so we're starting from blank number 30. Dash, whereas a helicopter needs to vary the pitch of its blades, the angle at which they attack in the air in order to maneuver, the multiple rotors on a drone have a fixed pitch. Okay, now what this sentence is doing, it's kind of comparing a helicopter to a drone, right? Because it says whereas, because the word whereas is important over here, because it's telling us that um, the sentence is pointing out the difference between a helicopter and a drone. Okay, so whereas a helicopter needs to vary the pitch of its blades, In order to maneuver, the multiple rotors on a drone have a fixed pitch. So what is being compared over here? Vary the pitch and fixed pitch. So a helicopter needs to vary its pitch and a drone has a fixed pitch, okay? So clearly it's a contrast sentence. It's a contrasting sentence. Okay, so let's look at the options. In addition to, wrong, moreover, wrong, although, can fit, on behalf of, wrong. Okay, so now the first two options are sort of therefore restatement. Okay, when we want to build upon an idea and we want to add a similar idea, we use in addition to or moreover. Okay, on behalf of is not fitting here in any case. The word although is fitting here, okay, because although is used in contrast. Okay, so you remember we had three types of sentences. One was comparison, one was contrast, and one was cause and effect. So this is contrast. Okay, so again, guys, you have to look at the word choice in the sentence, okay, because the word whereas was very important in identifying what kind of a sentence it was, and then using that, we chose an answer for the blank. Okay, let's move on. The drone instead maneuvers by independently changing the speed of one or more of its rotors under computer control. Dash, this setup requires fewer and less complex moving parts than a helicopter. It makes drones simpler, cheaper to build and maintain, and potentially more reliable. Okay, why this setup requires fewer and less complex? No. Wherever this setup requires fewer? No. Whether this setup requires fewer? No. So whether is used in comparing, right? So for example, I say I can't decide whether to go or not to go to the party, right? So I'm drawing a comparison, I'm giving a choice in a sentence, so that's where I use whether. Now here they're not giving us a choice. We will use the word as. Okay, let's put the word as and see if it fits. As this setup requires fewer and less complex moving parts than a helicopter, it makes drones simpler, cheaper to build and maintain, and potentially more reliable. This is a cause and effect sentence, right? I hope you guys can recognize that. It's a cause and effect sentence, the last one, right? Because it's saying that this setup, so this is the cause, this setup requires fewer and less complex moving parts than a helicopter. This is the event that is happening. And the effect of that is it makes drones simpler, cheaper to build and maintain, and potentially more reliable. Okay, so when we're introducing a cause and effect, we can use the word as. Um, For example, if I say, as I woke up late, I could not make it to my meeting. Okay, again, the same sentence, I just used a different word over here. I used the word as. So when we're introducing a cause and effect in a sentence, we can begin the sentence using the word as. Okay, so as I woke up late, I could not make it to my meeting. So clearly it's a cause and effect sentence and the word as is fitting over here. Okay, so guys, if you check your worksheets, the ones that will be linked down below in the description box, there are many more closed passages in the worksheet. So I suggest you to attempt them as soon as you're done watching this video. And again, to reiterate, you must watch the completing sentences video because I've discussed all of this in much greater detail in that video. Okay, so it's very important for you to go and watch that and then come and watch this and then attempt both the worksheets for completing sentences and for closed passage. Okay, and it's not that hard, it's actually pretty simple. You just need a bit of practice to become good at this. Okay, so yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.